Hey everybody, this is DM Mike, and today is my tips for Chapter 2, and kind of they're tips and also what I've learned and what I've changed. So this is not going to tell you exactly how to prep Chapter 2 and all that minutia. I think there's probably stuff already there on YouTube that you can find. I'm just going to tell you some things that I changed that might give you ideas. This is nothing more than kind of a springboard for you as a DM if you're taking Chapter 2. And maybe, if you go back and watch some of the campaign diaries, you also see some of the things to avoid. Matter of fact, I'm going to add another to my list here. Something I messed up on, and you should not do. Anyway, so I've not really numbered them. I think there's 8 or 9, maybe 10. Don't usually do more than 10 because that's just too much work. So anyway, I'm going to be referencing my notes. Now, the first thing, let's just get right into it. This is tips and changes you can do to Chapter 2. The first thing I did was I replaced some of the kobolds in Chapter 2, specifically the Stragglers map, and some of the kobolds in the camp. I traded them out for Dragon Shield kobolds. Now, why did I do that? Because my characters started off the campaign at level 3, and battles were tough, but they kind of made a cakewalk of a lot of the kobolds. So I felt like the kobolds at this point, they needed a leader, they needed someone with a little more hit points. So here's a tip. If your characters are starting at level 3 and they're coming into Horde of the Dragon Queen the first time, I would even encourage you to go back maybe even to Chapter 1 and throw in, not tons, because kobolds can be deadly because of their pack tactics, but put some Dragon Shield kobolds in there, especially where I inserted them primarily was at the Stragglers map. That's where I put the first batch. And there was only 2 of them. And let me tell you, if you go back and watch that campaign diary, those 2 put up a fight. And they were pretty tough to bring down. So anyway, that's the number 1 tip. I went in and replaced some of those lightweight soldiers with a couple of heavies, but not too much because you could end up killing your party before you know it. That's tip number 1. Let's see. Okay, so tip number 2, I use Tabletop Simulator, and if you go back and watch another one of my videos, you'll see the kind of cover and different things I created. The book talks about how it's, I think it's just a plain grassland, so it's pretty, there's nothing really there. It's just a straight shot practically. I wanted to change that up. It was more for thematics. I wanted, characters to have options to sneak through forests and trees and bushes, but also have some cover for some ranged characters. So just take that into account. The book is slightly descriptive of what's there, but at the same time, you also don't have a map to work with. Just know the shortcoming of the book. So definitely, I would recommend that you maybe put some cover in there, different things to spice up that particular encounter, because even some of your kobolds can be ranged as well, right? So everybody's kind of on equal footing. So go back and look at that. I think it's a campaign diary. It might be a map diary that I did for Chapter 2, just to show off a little bit of that. But yeah, I recommend put some additional terrain, some different things that characters can use, leap over, find cover with, or use against the enemy, and vice versa. All right, number 3, let me look at this. Okay, so increased rest time. Here's what I did. When they got back to the keep, which kind of segues itself. Oh, actually, let me make sure this is right. Okay, so once the main battle's over with in Chapter 1, you kind of segue into Chapter 2, and characters need to, make this quick decision to go to the camp, right? Well, before I kind of immediately went there, I felt like there's a lot of crap to do in Greenest before you can just go take off running after the enemy. So what I did, maybe this is a good springboard for you, is that they actually broke up in groups because Castellan and the governor were not quite ready for everybody just to go their separate ways. So what they had to do is they had to clean up Greenest. And that meant people like my cleric and my druid mixing potions, doing skill tests, healing a lot of the peasants and the soldiers that were still coming in from the battlefield. And then I had my tanks like, Storm, my thief, and our ranger going out on patrols and going around Greenest itself and killing off any other kobolds that were still alive or cultists and skirmishes. And how I did that was, we didn't sit there and there was combat. We didn't sit there and have like a whole nother combat scenario. We just played it out through narrative. All right, that's all you had to do is play it out through narrative. Just so you know, you can't just walk away from a battlefield and everything's fine. So we spent some time at the beginning of Chapter 2 cleaning up, in a way, Greenest, even though it's not completely done. But they tried to help, and I felt like it'd be a cool moment to introduce some skill challenges before we ran off to the camp. So Yeah, just something to keep in mind. Have them resupply, have them discuss their next moves, which will eventually happen, right? And all the skill challenges involved with just maybe stabilizing Greenest a little bit, right? Number 4, this is optional because you do have 2 encounters that are coming up in Chapter 2, the Stragglers map and the Rear Guard. So take it or leave it on this one, but I feel like, and I've discussed this in my other campaign diaries, that the wilderness in D&D should be threatening. Anytime you walk out of a city or town or a keep within a particular boundary or region, suddenly things become very hostile. And so I added in another encounter. We didn't play it out because it just I don't even remember now what the problem was, like if we just missed it or I forgot, but there was a knoll encounter that I had set up. And the reason why I did that was because you have this huge enemy forces moving away from Greenest, and they're most likely people are not getting along. There's probably some wounded they left behind, some treasure may have dropped, and so a lot of the blood and the dead soldiers and people that are wounded and stuff started to attract wildlife. It started to attract these gnolls who were finding bits of gold suddenly and these bodies, and so they were tracking the warband back to their camp, and there was a possibility that my group ran into them. And I think we did it as kind of a random encounter. I don't remember now, but we, for whatever the reason, avoided it. So I set up a separate map and just had this encounter ready. You may not want to do that because there are technically 2 encounters to come, but just something to think about. That amount of people moving that amount of product, stolen goods, and the death toll and just the amount of wounded people, I think would attract something, right? So if you want to change things around, maybe take away the stragglers and have another encounter there, that'd be a good place for that, and just maybe keep the rear guard, or vice versa, get rid of one of those. Either way, it's an encounter, but it made sense to me at the time that this would attract wildlife, meaning gnolls, orcs, things that would live in those grass fields that were suddenly like, hey, something's been intruding on my land, and they're finding gold and all kinds of stuff. So an optional wilderness encounter if you want. All right, so number 5, let's look at this. Okay, so a minor thing, this is probably a statement, but one thing I did when the characters were captured is I stripped them down naked. I took everything they had, weapons, all the gold they had just acquired, everything was taken away. And what that does is just, it gives your characters opportunity. It sucks for them, right? I know that it sucks. But when they get back to Greenest, suddenly they have to think about, okay, we can't just go running off. Now we got to restock and we have to resupply our stuff. We got to find some way of replacing armor that was one time better than what we're going to get now. Weapons that are gone. Our thief, who had plenty of hidden weapons and different things, all gone, So it's just a way to create a kind of a conundrum, a problem for your characters. And perhaps that's what everybody does anyway. I mean, a lot of the campaign diaries I would watch didn't seem to touch on that, as if the characters were just kind of tied up in their armor and left, and they escaped with everything. I'm not sure if that's a typical thing, but just in case you're not thinking about it, there you go. Just take everything, strip them down, take everything. Now here's the next, I'm going to go right into the next tip, because this is a problem that I did, and I shouldn't have done this. I chained up my characters. So don't chain them up, because the problem is Leocelin, who has a knife in his boot, that's all he has is a knife. He can't cut chains with a knife. So I had to come up with, a crazy reason for that to work, and that was just, it was kind of a BS thing, and I hated doing that, but I had kind of painted myself into a corner on that. So don't chain up your characters, just use rope, leather ties, different things like that. So Leocelin can, get him out of that situation. I was wrapped up in other things and just wasn't thinking, and had him in chained manacles and stuff. And that creates a problem when you want them to escape. All right, so don't do that. All right, so next one here. Let's go back to Greenest. What I did for Greenest when they got to the end of Chapter 2 and returned to Greenest is that, to me, and you can watch this is cutscene number 6, The Witch in the Night, which kind of explains this. I won't re-explain it here. But I felt like Greenest still needs to be active. It's still working. It's still functioning, regardless that the characters are there. So when they got back, I had introduced this new race that came out, I think, in Volo's Guide, or I think it's Volo's Guide, called the GIF. And the GIF were pulled in for reinforcements. This is nothing but flavor. That's all it is. So when your characters go to this camp and they're doing all this stuff, when they get back to Greenest, in their imagination, there's new things happening. So don't forget about Greenest. Don't let Greenest suddenly slow down And when they get back there, like nothing has changed. Nothing's going on. No, I brought in reinforcements. Also, they had started to build a retaining wall, some kind of temporary wall to put around Greenest because they did not, for counterattack. And that's why they hired the Griff to protect them while they healed, buried their dead, and kind of got their forces, their small military, back together again, right? So don't forget about Greenest. Don't let it just go to the wayside. I plan on using Greenest for a very long time, probably till the end of the book. Maybe it'll go into Rise of Tiamat because so much happened there. Don't kick it to the side. Okay, so the GIF. This is just a tip. This is just something you can leave, take it or leave it, I guess. I did Choose Your Own Adventure. And you go back and watch Campaign Diary number 5 or 6, whatever the most recent one was, you'll see what I'm talking about. I used Google Slides to create some scenarios on the road for Choose Your Own Adventure. Just, very simple scenarios. And you can do this. I'm going to do this now for every single one of my games. This is something now that I will continue to use forever. I liked it. It went back to the old 80s idea, the old books from the 80s that had like just a scenario and a couple answers. And I did it for 3 people individually, and then I did 1 or 2 for the entire group. And those were fun to do. I think as a DM, you'll find them to be fun to do. So I use Google Slides for that. I'm playing digitally, so I'm playing on a TV and they can see it. I just put the slide up there. They work together. They talk about what they want to do and they make their decision. It was fun. And that's not just a chapter 2 tip. I think you could take that to any chapter, right? Or actually any campaign when you really think about it. I know I will. So I had a fun time doing that. Let's go back to Greenest now. This is tip number 8, I guess. I think is where I'm at. Losing count. Don't quote me. I gave him gold. Excuse me. I know the campaign talks about how you give them a bunch of gold. I've said this in my other campaigns, campaign diaries, that I have lowered the value of gold. I didn't want to be throwing gold at my players left and right. It's just, it gets old and they get rich like that, right? So I wanted to pull back some. So when they got back to Greenest, still kind of in chapter 2, they leveled up first. I always feel like, if you want to level up, you need to be back in a safe location, and that's where you level up. So that happened at the end of chapter 2. Also at the end of chapter 2, they awarded the players, all right? So they went down to the keep, Governor Nighthill and Castellan, and they found some jewels, and I went to the Dungeon Master's Guide and pulled a couple things out. You can see this in my campaign diary. But also, I went a little bit further than that, and I'd recommend you do the same. Like, yes, you could throw gold and jewels at them, great. They'll need it at that point, depending on what happens in the camp. They will need it. But also, they got a kind of medal that the original, the halfling, which I can't remember her name, who founded Greenest, she maybe have crafted something like this that for people that did things in Greenest that were above and beyond what their expectations, whether it be saving the place or whatever. You can make it up as you go. But they were each given an award. I also, the governor, because of what they did, parceled out 1 acre of land for each character. So now they can kind of go back and do whatever they want for Greenest. And I think that's why Greenest for me is going to be a long-term place. A lot happened there. They have contacts. Now they have land and property. So we got the parcels of land, the medals, and look at the Dungeon Master's Guide. I think it's page 295. Could be completely wrong. It's called the Letters of Recommendation. I've talked about this in my campaign diary, and I thought that was kind of cool. Just stumbled upon it as I was looking for new and different things to give my characters. And it's just like this roll of papers, has city seals and whatnot. And this can, I think, role-playing wise for you, beyond maybe even Hoard of the Dragon Queen, opens up opportunities in other cities and towns. It just kind of records a character's deeds and what they did. It's just it's a powerful resume, if you will, almost like the keys to a city kind of thing. So I gave each one of them one of those, signed by Castellan and Governor Nighthill, and outlined what they had done for Greenest. So they could roll that up, take it with them, and they can go to Waterdeep. They can go anywhere and maybe present these, because other city officials would know about this kind of stuff and would understand what those seals are and what this means. And that might open up some new role-playing opportunities, new benefits that they may not be aware of and that you can come up with. All right, so okay, so I talked about the chains, but I think, guys, that's really about it. That's chapter 2 for me. I think that's, I think that's all I really did. As you can see, it's minor stuff. I'm not here to tell you how to prep it exactly, but just maybe give you ideas and kind of where I stumbled a little bit. First of all, being the chains, that should not have done that. Just be advised to, if you've watched my campaign diaries, you know what I'm talking about. Chapter 2 can be pretty brutal when they get into the camp, and just be prepared that most likely not everyone will be captured. So just think about that. I don't know. I really can't tell you how to plan for it because you just don't know what's going to happen. But just be advised, sometimes all your characters will be captured, all of them might escape, or you might have what I had, which was a mix. 2 people escaped, 3 people captured, including Leosolin, so 4 really. So just be ready for that. Anything can happen in the camp, all right? But whatever you do, don't put them in metal chains, all right? So anyway, I think that's it. Let me just recap. This probably not be the best recap in the world, but first of all, number 1, replace the enemies. I used Dragon Shield Kobolds. 2, I created a bit more cover at the Stragglers map just for ranged characters for both sides, enemy and your PCs. 3, I increased rest time kind of at Greenest, where we went and we did the skill challenges and resupply and hunted down any mercenaries who were still causing trouble, things like that. Patrols and whatnot. Number 4, this is optional, a wilderness encounter. Maybe your characters are high level, so you can throw in maybe one more wilderness encounter. And it could be that they can miss it too, like it's an opportunity for them to stealth right by it, So, okay, number 5, I took all the weapons and gold from them at the player. So in other words, I stripped them down, nothing left. That made them have to kind of go back to Greenest and restock and resupply, just more role-playing elements to your session. Number 6, pulled a new monster, the GIF, and kind of changed the landscape of Greenest a little bit. So added the GIF, they did a regiment of like 65 troops. So, and they all had guns. Directly from the book, I gave them weapons and everything. But when they got there, it kind of changed the landscape of Greenest. Maybe that's the tip really. Change the landscape of Greenest. They are moving forward. Things are happening. For instance, in my campaign, the sanctuary burned down. Not good. So they're out there fixing that. They're out there putting a temporary wall around. They have hired guns. It doesn't have to be the GIF. It could be whatever. Maybe it's mercenaries, different kind of mercenaries. But Greenest is changing. So I think I would recommend, spicing it up a little bit with that. CYOA, choose your own adventure. Up to you. It's completely optional. I found it to be entertaining and fun. They actually really, really love them. I think this is number 8 because I haven't been counting. Gave awards, not just gold and silver, but also gave them parcels of land and the letters of recommendation that you can find in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Don't have to do that, of course, just an option. And then I think 9 or 10 here was don't chain them up, don't put them in manacles. It just created a lot of issues, and I had to come up with really stupid, lame thing to try to get them out of that. So anyway, guys, I think that is it. If I have any more, I'll just add it on to the end here. But that's it for my Chapter 2 tips. I am now about neck deep in Chapter 3. We're kind of on our way to the caverns. There's a lot that's going to happen there. And when we get to the end of that, I'll let you know what I changed, what I added, and hopefully what can help you when you go run Chapter 3. All right, guys, that's it. This is going to be, it's relatively short. I'm kind of proud of myself. All right, guys, that's it. I'll see you in the next video.